Hello everyone and welcome to week 4. My name is Juan Martinez and today I'll be talking about two applications, one called Zapier.com and the other one called ifTTT.com, which I'll refer to if in this video. The idea behind these applications is to easily integrate applications that don't usually communicate with each other. So this is a way to facilitate for a user to easily integrate these applications without actually having to write any kind of code for the applications to work together. So before we dive too much into these two applications, I kind of want to give a coding example, and I think this is going to help you guys understand how these triggers are created and how these applications notify each other so that they can perform a certain action. And I want to talk about conditional statements, and specifically I want to talk about an if statement. And basically, sometimes you do not want a certain piece of code to be executed unless a certain condition is met. So if we look at our example here below, we have a variable called condition that we initialize to true. And we have our if statement saying if this condition is true, then we want to go ahead and print this line, the variable set to true. The purpose of this example is to illustrate that in order for this block of code to execute, we need to meet this condition. And the same way we'll find out as we're creating our notifications through the if and the Zapier application, a condition must be met in order for an activity to be performed. This is the if application. I've already created an account. And you'll see here I'm in the My Recipes section, and all the list here, the collection that you see is actually recipes that I've already created. So think of these collections as already as if statements that we've created, a collection of if statements. So you'll see some applications that you're familiar with, Facebook, Dropbox, Google Drive. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and going to create a recipe here. And you'll see here if this, then that. This is our if statement, and we're going to go ahead and create our condition. I'm going to go ahead and do a Facebook condition here. And I'm going to say that every time I post a hashtag, I want to be notified about this. So I'm going to go ahead and say go ASU, create the trigger. And if this condition is set to true, then I want to perform an action. And I'm going to go ahead and email myself whenever I post go ASU. So very simple here. I'm just going to include my email address. And then you'll see here these things called ingredients, and they're basically parameters that you can add to your email. So in our subject, I'll just leave the hashtag ingredient on here. And basically, I should see a message that says go ASU from, and this is the sender or the Facebook profile, and then that's going to have a link to the application. So I'm going to go ahead and create the action, create recipe. So I have it on here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Facebook, go ahead and say go ASU, post, and we should see an email shortly. Here's that email. Your application actually works very similar to the if application. Instead of recipes, they're called zaps. And I created a zap here with the Visual Studio and Gmail, and I'm going to dive in here. So basically, if I have a project that I've set up with Visual Studio Online and I have a group of developers, and let's say I want to be notified every time a bug is entered, I can do that with Zapier, sorry. So what I need is I need to make sure I have a Visual Studio Online project set up, and in this case I have one called Juan Test. And basically the work type item here is if every time a bug is entered, I want to be notified via email about the bug. So very similar to if I specify the email address. Instead of ingredients, they actually call these insert fields. So for my subject, I just have the created date, the resource ID, and then for the body, I just want to include the resource ID and then the message text that was included with the bug. And actually, the cool feature here is I can actually test those triggers before actually turning on the Zap. What value do you get from these applications? If you had to create some way to integrate two applications that didn't speak the same language, then you would have to create some kind of proxy to facilitate that integration. But Zapier and If actually have that integration out of the box for you. So they provide this interoperability with applications that would normally not speak with each other or communicate with each other. And now you have this flexibility of creating these events based on these conditions from these separate applications. In terms of usability, I found both applications to be intuitive. I did prefer the user interface from the If application. I thought it was easier to use. One cool recipe that I liked was I actually have a Nest thermostat, so I was able to create a threshold, and if that threshold was met, then I would get notified via an SMS message. Definitely, I think Zapier has applications that are more meant for the workplace, where the If application has more applications that are meant more for home or for social interaction.